The morning sun beat down on Fort Harrison's training grounds as 22-year-old Maya Rodriguez adjusted her gear for the third time. Her hands moved with practiced precision, checking every strap and buckle on her tactical vest. She'd been at this base for exactly 2 weeks, and already she could feel the weight of disapproving stares from her fellow soldiers. "Look what the army sent us now," muttered Sergeant Jake Thompson, loud enough for half the squad to hear. "Another pretty face who probably can't tell the difference between a rifle and a broomstick." Maya kept her eyes forward, focusing on the task ahead. She'd heard worse during her time in basic training. Being a woman in the military meant proving herself every single day, and she was ready for that challenge. "I heard she got her assignment through some diversity program," added Private Danny Walsh, barely lowering his voice. "Bet she's never even seen real combat." If only they knew, Maya thought to herself. But her service record was classified at a level these soldiers would never understand. To them, she was just another inexperienced recruit trying to make it in a man's world. Captain Robert Pierce walked onto the training ground, his weathered face scanning the assembled soldiers. At 55, he'd seen more than his share of fresh-faced recruits who thought they were ready for real military service. His eyes lingered on Maya for a moment longer than the others. "All right, listen up," Pierce barked. "Today we're running tactical response drills. You'll be working in teams of 4, moving through the urban warfare course. Each team gets one jammed weapons scenario to deal with. Your job is to clear the malfunction and complete the mission." Maya found herself assigned to a team with Thompson, Walsh, and a quiet soldier named Marcus Webb. She could see the annoyance in Thompson's eyes immediately. "Great," Thompson said under his breath. "We get stuck with the rookie." The urban warfare course was designed to simulate a small American town under siege. Plywood buildings lined mock streets, complete with windows, doorways, and plenty of places for simulated enemies to hide. Maya had trained in similar setups before, but she couldn't let on about her experience as they moved through the course. Maya stayed in formation, following Thompson's lead even though she could see several tactical errors in his approach. When they reached the third building, Walsh's rifle suddenly jammed during what should have been a simple clearing operation. "Damn it," Walsh cursed, frantically trying to clear the stoppage. "This piece of junk always does this." Thompson looked around, nervously. In a real combat situation, a jammed weapon could mean death for the entire team. "Webb, cover the entrance. Rodriguez, watch our 6, I'll help Walsh with the rifle." But Maya could see immediately what the problem was. She'd dealt with this exact malfunction countless times before. The bolt carrier group was stuck, likely due to a double feed that required a specific sequence to clear safely. "Sergeant Thompson," she said quietly, "I think I can stay in position." "Rodriguez," Thompson snapped, "we don't need your help." For the next 3 minutes, Thompson and Walsh struggled with the weapon while Maya watched valuable time tick away. She could hear Captain Pierce's voice echoing across the training ground, calling out time warnings to all the teams. Finally, Maya couldn't stand it anymore. "Sergeant, with respect, you're making it worse. Let me try." Thompson's face reddened. "Listen, sweetheart, I've been doing this for 8 years. I think I know how to clear a simple malfunction." But their time was running out, and even Thompson could see they were failing the exercise. With obvious reluctance, he stepped aside and gestured toward the rifle. Maya took the weapon and immediately began the proper clearing procedure. Her movements were swift and confident, each action flowing seamlessly into the next. Within 30 seconds, she had the malfunction cleared and the rifle ready for action. "How did you?" Walsh started to ask. But Maya was already moving toward their objective. The team completed the exercise with seconds to spare. But Maya could feel the tension radiating from her teammates. She'd shown them up, and they didn't like it one bit. After the drill, as they cleaned their weapons, Thompson approached Maya with a cold smile. "Lucky guess back there. Rodriguez, don't let it go to your head." "It wasn't luck, Sergeant," Maya replied calmly. "I've seen that malfunction before. Where? In your bedroom playing video games." Walsh laughed, earning chuckles from several nearby soldiers. Maya bit back her response. She wanted to tell them about the night missions in Syria, the urban combat in Afghanistan, the classified operations that had earned her decorations these men would never see. But her orders were clear: maintain her cover as a regular transfer from another base. That evening in the mess hall, Maya sat alone while the other soldiers clustered around tables, swapping stories and jokes. She'd grown used to the isolation, but it still stung. She was here for a reason, though she couldn't share that reason with anyone. Captain Pierce walked through the mess hall, stopping briefly at various tables to chat with his soldiers. When he reached Maya's table, he paused. Rodriguez, he said, his voice neutral. You did good work today on that weapons malfunction. Thank you, sir, Maya replied. Pierce studied her for a moment. Where did you say you transferred from? Fort Benning, sir, advanced infantry training. Pierce nodded slowly, but something in his eyes suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Well, keep up the good work. We need soldiers who can think under pressure. As Pierce walked away, Maya noticed Thompson watching the interaction with obvious irritation. She had a feeling her troubles were just beginning. Later that night, as Maya prepared for sleep in her small barracks room, she allowed herself a moment to think about why she was really here. The mission briefing had been clear. There were suspected security leaks at Fort Harrison, and someone with her unique skills needed to investigate from the inside. Her cover story was solid, but maintaining it while dealing with the constant undermining from her fellow soldiers was proving more challenging than she'd expected. She touched the small, nearly invisible patch sewn into the inner lining of her tactical vest. It was black, with a simple octopus design, the symbol of her real unit. A unit so classified that most generals had never heard of it. A unit known only by its codename Kraken. Maya closed her eyes and tried to push away the memories of her last mission, the faces of the team members she'd lost. The reason she'd requested this undercover assignment in the first place. She needed time to heal, time to process what she'd been through. But she also needed to prove to herself that she could still do the job. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests of her resolve. Thompson and his friends would continue trying to break her down, to prove she didn't belong. But Maya Rodriguez had survived things that would break most people. A few bullies at a training base weren't going to stop her from completing her mission. That as she drifted off to sleep, Maya whispered a quiet promise to herself. She would find the security leak, protect this base and its soldiers, and she would do it all while maintaining her cover. No matter what it cost her personally, the next morning would bring unexpected challenges that would test everything she believed about herself and her mission. 3 weeks had passed since Maya's arrival at Fort Harrison, and the harassment had only gotten worse. What started as casual dismissiveness had evolved into deliberate sabotage. Her gear would mysteriously go missing before training exercises. Her bunk would be someone had even put salt in her coffee grounds. But Maya endured it all with quiet dignity, keeping her eyes on the bigger picture. Her real mission was progressing slowly. She'd identified several soldiers with access to sensitive information and was carefully monitoring their activities. The security leak was here somewhere, she just needed more time to find it. On this particular morning, Captain Pierce announced a major field exercise. We're running a full battalion-level operation starting tomorrow, he told the assembled soldiers. This is the real deal. People, live ammunition, realistic scenarios, and evaluation by command staff from the Pentagon. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Pentagon evaluators meant high-ranking officers who might recognize her from her previous assignments. She'd have to be extra careful to maintain her cover. Teams will be assigned tonight, Pierce continued. Each squad will have specific objectives, and failure is not an option. This exercise will determine which units are ready for deployment and which need additional training. That evening, Maya discovered she'd been assigned to Thompson's squad for the exercise. Her heart sank as she saw the satisfied smirk on his face. Well, well, Thompson said loudly. Looks like we get to babysit the princess for the big show. Try not to get us all killed, Rodriguez. The next morning, as dawn broke over the Missouri countryside, Maya found herself crammed into the back of a transport truck with 11 other soldiers. The exercise area covered 50 square miles of hills, forests, and abandoned buildings. It was designed to simulate complex combat operations in varied terrain. Their objective was to secure a series of strategic points while avoiding or neutralizing opposing forces played by soldiers from other battalions. Maya's squad was tasked with clearing an abandoned factory complex that intelligence suggested was being used as an enemy command center. As they approached their insertion point, Sergeant Thompson outlined his plan. Maya listened with growing concern. His approach was predictable and would likely result in heavy casualties if this were a real combat situation. Sergeant, she said, quietly, what about approaching from the north side? There's better cover. And did I ask for your opinion, Rodriguez? Thompson cut her off. You're here to follow orders, not give them. Private Walsh snickered. Maybe she watched some war movies and thinks she's an expert now. Maya fell silent, but her mind was racing. She recognized this type of facility from previous operations. There would be multiple entry points, overlapping fields of fire, and likely booby traps if the opposing force was competent. Thompson Frontal assault would be suicide. They reached the factory complex just after noon. The buildings were old, probably dating from the 1950s, with broken windows and rusted metal siding. Perfect for urban warfare training. Thompson deployed his squad according to his plan, sending teams to 3 different entry points simultaneously. Maya found herself paired with Private Marcus Webb, the quiet soldier who rarely spoke but seemed to pay attention to everything. Rodriguez, Webb whispered, as they moved toward their assigned entry point, Thompson's plan is garbage. This is exactly the kind of setup where we'd get massacred in real combat. Maya looked at him with surprise. It was the first time anyone in the squad had acknowledged her tactical knowledge. You've seen action before, Webb nodded grimly. 2 tours in Afghanistan. I know what good tactics look like, and this isn't it. As they approached the factory entrance, Maya's instincts screamed danger. The door was slightly ajar, and there were scuff marks in the dirt that suggested recent activity, classic signs of an ambush setup. Webb, hold position, she whispered into her radio. Something's not right here. But Thompson's voice crackled back immediately. Rodriguez, you're not in charge here. Execute the plan as ordered. Maya watched as the other teams moved toward their entry points. In a real combat situation, she would have called for artillery support or requested reconnaissance before proceeding, but this was just an exercise, and she had to maintain her cover. The ambush came exactly as she'd predicted. The moment Thompson's team breached the main entrance, simulated gunfire erupted from multiple positions. Red smoke grenades marked the casualties, and within seconds, half of Thompson's team was declared eliminated. Maya and Webb were advancing on their entry point when she heard Thompson's panicked voice over the radio. We're taking heavy fire. Rodriguez, get in there and support us. But Maya could see the trap. The opposing force had set up a perfect crossfire that would eliminate anyone who entered through the side door. Following Thompson's order would accomplish nothing except getting her and Webb killed in the exercise. Negative, Sergeant, she replied. We need to find another way in. That's a direct order, Rodriguez. Get your ass in there now. Maya made a split-second decision that would change everything. Instead of following the suicidal order, she led Webb around to the back of the building where she'd spotted a maintenance entrance, partially hidden by overgrown vegetation. Using hand signals, she communicated her plan to Webb. They would enter through the maintenance tunnel, work their way up to the 2nd floor, and neutralize the opposing force from above. That it was a risky plan that required precise timing and coordination, but it was also the kind of tactical thinking that had kept Maya alive through dozens of real combat missions. The plan worked perfectly. While the opposing force focused on defending against Thompson's frontal assault, Maya and Webb infiltrated from an unexpected direction. Within 10 minutes, they had eliminated the entire enemy position and secured the objective. The exercise ended with Maya's actions being declared the deciding factor in their squad's success. But instead of praise, she faced Thompson's fury. He disobeyed a direct order, he shouted, his face purple with rage. In real combat, that's called mutiny. In real combat, following that order would have gotten us both killed. Maya replied calmly. Don't lecture me about combat, you stupid bee. Thompson caught himself before finishing the slur, but the damage was done. Half the battalion had heard him that evening. Maya was called to Captain Pierce's office. She expected to face disciplinary action for disobeying Thompson's order, but Pierce's expression was unreadable. Rodriguez, he said, closing the door behind her. I've been watching you for weeks now. Your performance today was unusual for someone with your supposed level of experience. Maya kept her expression neutral. I just tried to complete the mission, sir. Pierce walked around his desk and leaned against it, studying her face. Where did you really serve before coming here? Fort Benning, sir. As stated in my records, I called Fort Benning yesterday, Pierce said quietly. They have no record of a Maya Rodriguez in their advanced infantry program. Maya's heart began to race, but she showed no outward sign of concern. There must be some mistake, sir. Perhaps a paperwork error. Pierce nodded slowly. Perhaps you're not who you claim to be. Before Maya could respond, there was a knock on the office door. Pierce called for the visitor to enter, and Maya turned to see a man in dress uniform with more stars on his shoulders than she'd ever seen in one place. General William Hartley, Pentagon Joint Chief of Staff, stepped into the office. Maya's blood ran cold. Hartley had personally briefed her on classified missions. If he recognized her, her cover would be blown completely. Captain Pierce, Hartley said, then his eyes fell on Maya. For a moment, neither of them moved. Maya braced herself for exposure, for the end of her mission and possibly her career. But Hartley's face remained impassive as he looked her over. "And you are?" he asked. "Private Rodriguez, sir," Maya replied, snapping to attention. Hartley studied her for a long moment, and Maya could see something flickering in his eyes. Recognition, curiosity, she couldn't tell. "I see," Hartley said finally. "Captain Pierce, I need to speak with you privately about tomorrow's evaluation. Private Rodriguez, you're dismissed." Maya saluted and left the office. Her mind racing. Had Hartley recognized her? Was he protecting her cover, or had she somehow managed to fool even him? As she walked back to her barracks, she didn't notice Sergeant Thompson watching from the shadows, his face twisted with hatred and suspicion. He'd heard enough of the conversation to know that something wasn't right about Maya Rodriguez, and he was determined to find out what. The next morning would bring a crisis that would test Maya's cover story to its breaking point and force her to make choices that could expose everything she'd worked to hide. Brought with it an unusual tension that Maya could feel the moment she woke up. The barracks were quieter than normal, and she noticed several soldiers whispering in small groups before falling silent when she passed at breakfast. Thompson approached her table with a cold smile. "Big day today, Rodriguez. Hope you're ready for some real evaluation." "I'm always ready, Sergeant," Maya replied, not looking up from her meal. "We'll see about that," Thompson said, then walked away, leaving Maya with an uneasy feeling in her stomach. The morning briefing revealed that General Hartley would be personally observing today's advanced weapons training. Each soldier would be tested on marksmanship, weapons maintenance, and tactical decision-making under pressure. Maya felt her palms grow damp. Advanced weapons training would showcase skills that went far beyond what a regular infantry soldier should possess. She'd have to deliberately underperform to maintain her cover, but not so badly that it aroused suspicion. The first test was marksmanship at various distances. Maya approached the firing line with her assigned M4 rifle, very aware that Thompson was watching her every move. At 100 yards. She deliberately placed her shots in a tight group just outside the bullseye. Good enough to pass, but not exceptional. At 300 yards, she again held back, though her instincts screamed to show her true abilities. But when they moved to the 500-yard range, something went wrong. The soldier next to her, Private Lisa Martinez, was clearly struggling. Her shots were going wide, and Maya could see panic setting in. "I can't do this," Martinez whispered, her voice shaking. "I'm going to fail, and they'll kick me out of the program." Maya watched as Martinez's next shot went completely off target. Without thinking, she leaned over and quietly coached her on breathing technique and sight alignment. "Easy, Martinez. Just breathe naturally and squeeze the trigger straight back. Don't jerk it." Following Maya's advice, Martinez's next shot hit the target ring. Her face lit up with gratitude, but Maya's act of kindness had been noticed. Thompson was standing behind them, and his eyes had narrowed with suspicion. The next phase was weapons maintenance under time pressure. Each soldier was given a disassembled rifle and told to reassemble it as quickly as possible while blindfolded. But Maya knew she could complete this task in under 90 seconds, but that would be far too fast for her cover story. She deliberately fumbled with some of the smaller components, making believable mistakes that added time to her performance. She finished in just over 3 minutes, respectable but not outstanding. Thompson had clocked in at 4 minutes, and didn't look pleased that she'd beaten his time. The final test was tactical scenario decision-making. Soldiers were presented with various combat situations and asked to explain their recommended response. Maya listened as her fellow soldiers gave textbook answers that would get people killed in real combat. When her turn came, she was presented with a scenario involving a hostage situation in an urban environment. Maya's mind immediately flashed to a similar situation she'd faced in Syria, where 3 of her team members had been captured by insurgents. The standard approach would be to establish a perimeter and attempt negotiation. She began giving the expected answer, but then she found herself continuing. However, in a real situation, you'd also want to consider the structural integrity of the building, potential escape routes for the hostages, and the possibility of diversionary tactics. She caught herself and stopped, but the damage was done. Several officers were staring at her with obvious interest, including General Hartley. Thompson stepped forward. "That's an interesting analysis, Rodriguez. Almost like you've dealt with hostage situations before." "Just thinking through the possibilities," Sergeant Maya replied, but she could see the suspicion in his eyes. After the evaluations, Maya thought she'd made it through without major incident, but as she was cleaning her rifle in the armory, Private Walsh approached with a malicious grin. "Hey, Rodriguez, Thompson wants to see you in the maintenance shed. Says he's got a special assignment for you." Maya felt her instincts flare to life. Something wasn't right, but she couldn't refuse without arousing more suspicion. The maintenance shed was located at the far end of the base, away from the main buildings. As Maya approached, she could see that the lights were off inside. Every alarm bell in her head was ringing. She pushed open the door and stepped inside, immediately noting the positions of tools that could be used as weapons and identifying potential escape routes, old habits from her real training. "Thompson," she called out. "Sergeant Thompson, you wanted to see me." The door slammed shut behind her, and she heard the sound of a bolt being thrown. She was trapped. "Not exactly," came Thompson's voice from the darkness, but he wasn't alone. Maya could hear at least 3 other people breathing in the shed. Emergency lighting flickered on, revealing Thompson, Walsh, and 2 other soldiers she didn't recognize. They were all wearing civilian clothes, and their expressions were hostile. "See, Rodriguez, we've been doing some checking up on you," Thompson said, circling her slowly. "And funny thing, nobody seems to know where you really came from." Maya kept her expression calm, though her muscles were tensed for action. "I don't know what you're talking about, Sergeant." "Cut the act," Walsh spat. "We know you're not who you claim to be. Question is, what are you really doing here?" One of the unknown soldiers stepped forward. Maya recognized him now, Corporal Rick Stevens from another company. "Maybe she's a spy," he suggested. "Foreign intelligence trying to infiltrate our base." Maya almost laughed at the irony. They thought she was a foreign spy when she was actually trying to catch one. That would explain how she knows so much about weapons and tactics. Thompson mused. "No regular infantry soldier performs like she did today." "I just studied hard and had good instructors," Maya said. But she could see they weren't buying it. Thompson pulled out his phone and held it up. "See, here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell us who you really are and why you're here. If you don't, this video is going to show you attacking us, and we'll have no choice but to defend ourselves." Maya realized with growing alarm that they were planning to stage an assault and claim self-defense. Her mind raced through her options. She could probably take all 4 of them, but that would definitely blow her cover. And if Thompson had really made that phone call to Fort Benning, her fake background was already compromised. "I'm waiting, Rodriguez," Thompson said, stepping closer. "Or should I say, whoever you really are." Maya was preparing to make her move when she heard footsteps outside the shed. Heavy, purposeful footsteps that sounded like military boots. "What the hell is going on in here?" came a booming voice from outside. Thompson's face went pale. Maya recognized the voice to General Hartley. The bolt on the door rattled, and Hartley's voice came again, angrier this time. "Open this door immediately, or I'll have it broken down." Thompson looked around at his conspirators in panic. They were trapped now, caught in the act of whatever they'd planned to do to Maya. Walsh moved to unbolt the door, but as it swung open, Maya saw something that made her heart stop. General Hartley was standing in the doorway, but his eyes weren't focused on Thompson or the other soldiers. He was staring directly at Maya's tactical vest, which had been torn slightly in her struggle to stay calm. Through the small tear, a piece of black fabric was visible, the inner lining that contained her Kraken unit patch. Hartley's eyes widened slightly, and Maya saw his lips move silently as he read the barely visible octopus symbol. "Kraken unit," he whispered, so quietly that only Maya could hear him. The general's entire demeanor changed in an instant. His face hardened into an expression Maya had seen only a few times before, when national security was at stake. "Sergeant Thompson," Hartley said, his voice deadly calm. "You and your men will report to the detention facility immediately. You're all under arrest." "Sir, I don't understand," Thompson stammered. You were just committing an act of treason." Hartley cut him off, attempting to interrogate and potentially harm a classified military asset. Maya felt the world spinning around her. Her cover was blown, but in a way she'd never expected. Hartley knew exactly who she was, and Thompson's amateur investigation had stumbled into something far more dangerous than any of them realized. As military police arrived to take Thompson and his accomplices into custody, approached Maya with an expression she couldn't read. "Agent Rodriguez," he said quietly, using a rank that didn't officially exist, "I think we need to talk." General Hartley led Maya to a secure conference room in the base's administration building. The walls were lined with soundproofing material, and Maya noticed the telltale signs of electronic surveillance countermeasures. This was a room designed for discussing classified information. As they sat across from each other at a metal table, Hartley studied Maya's face with the intensity of someone trying to solve a complex puzzle. Agent Maya Rodriguez, Kraken Unit, he said slowly. Medal of Honor recipient, Silver Star, 3 Purple Hearts. Officially killed in action 6 months ago during Operation Silent Thunder. Maya kept her expression neutral, though her mind was racing. I'm not sure what you're talking about, General. Hartley reached into his briefcase and pulled out a classified file folder. He opened it and turned it toward Maya, revealing her real military photograph and service record. Captain Maya Rodriguez, he read aloud, leader of Alpha Team Kraken, Special Operations Unit. 12 successful deep cover missions. Expert in counterintelligence, urban warfare, and high-value target elimination. Maya stared at the file, seeing her real life laid out in stark black and white. How long have you known? I recognized you the moment I walked into Pierce's office yesterday, Hartley replied. The question is, what the hell are you doing here? Pretending to be a regular infantry private. Maya leaned back in her chair, weighing her options. She'd been operating under deep cover orders. But those orders came from someone with less authority than the man sitting across from her. I'm on assignment, sir. Investigating suspected security leaks at Fort Harrison. Hartley's eyebrows rose. Investigating security leaks. On whose authority? Colonel Matthews' Defense Intelligence Agency. Hartley was quiet for a long moment, and Maya could see him processing this information. Finally, he picked up a secure phone and dialed a number. Get me Colonel Matthews at DAA, he said. After a brief wait, he continued. Colonel, this is General Hartley. I need to discuss one of your agents. Yes, Maya Rodriguez. Maya listened to Hartley's side of the conversation, growing more confused with each exchange. Finally, Hartley hung up and looked at her with a grim expression. Colonel Matthews has no knowledge of any assignment involving you at Fort Harrison, he said quietly. In fact, according to his records, you're supposed to be on medical leave pending psychological evaluation. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. That's impossible. I have written orders, show me. Hartley commanded. Maya reached for her equipment bag and pulled out a sealed envelope containing her mission orders. As Hartley read through the documents, his frown deepened. These orders are fake, he said. Finally, the letterhead is wrong, the signature is forged, and the authorization codes don't exist in our system. The room seemed to spin around Maya as the implications hit her. But someone contacted me, gave me the mission briefing. The cover story was perfect. Who contacted you? Hartley asked urgently. Maya tried to remember the details of that meeting 6 weeks ago. She'd been staying at a safe house, recovering from the trauma of losing her entire team during their last mission. A man in an expensive suit had arrived, with credentials identifying him as Agent Morrison from DIA. Agent Morrison, she said slowly. He showed me DIA credentials and new details about my service record that should have been classified. Hartley was already reaching for the phone. Again, I need a full background check on anyone named Morrison with DIA access in the last 60 days. He barked into the receiver. As they waited, Maya tried to piece together what had happened. Someone with access to classified information had manipulated her into coming to Fort Harrison under false pretenses. But why? General, she said slowly, what if the security leak I was sent to find is real, but whoever sent me here is the actual source of the leak? Hartley's eyes sharpened. Explain. Think about it. They needed someone inside Fort Harrison to gather intelligence, but they couldn't do it themselves without arousing suspicion. So they found someone with the right skills, but in a vulnerable, emotional state, and convinced her she was on a legitimate mission. They used you, Hartley said grimly. The secure phone rang, and Hartley answered immediately. After a brief conversation, he hung up with a dark expression. There is no Agent Morrison with current DIA credentials, he said. But there was a James Morrison who worked for DIA until 18 months ago, when he was fired for selling classified information to foreign contacts. Maya felt sick. She'd been played by a traitor, manipulated into becoming an unwitting spy against her own country. General, what have I done? She whispered. What information have I compromised? Hartley stood up and began pacing. That depends on what you've observed and reported back. I haven't reported anything back, Maya said quickly. Morrison told me to gather information for 2 months before making contact. I was supposed to identify personnel with access to sensitive materials and document their routines. And did you? Maya nodded miserably. I have detailed notes on 17 different soldiers and officers, including their security clearances, daily schedules, and personal vulnerabilities. Hartley stopped pacing and stared at her. Where are these notes? hidden in my barracks room. Morrison gave me specific instructions on what to look for and how to document it. We need to secure those notes immediately, Hartley said, reaching for his radio. But before he could call for assistance, there was a soft knock on the conference room door. Captain Pierce entered, his face grim. General, we have a problem. Private Rodriguez's barracks room was broken into an hour ago. It's been completely ransacked. Maya's heart sank. Someone had gotten to her intelligence first. Was anything taken? Hartley asked. Hard to tell, Pierce replied, but whoever did it knew exactly what they were looking for. They ignored personal items and electronics but went through every piece of paper and clothing. Maya realized with growing alarm that her cover wasn't just blown, it was deliberately destroyed. Someone wanted her mission to fail, wanted her to be exposed. General, she said slowly, I think I've been set up twice. First by Morrison to gather intelligence, and now by someone else to make sure I couldn't complete the mission or report back. Thompson, Hartley said suddenly. What's Sergeant Thompson's investigation into your background? Someone fed him information, encouraged him to dig deeper. His confrontation tonight wasn't just about hazing, it was designed to expose you. At exactly the right moment, Maya felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Someone wanted me caught before I could figure out who the real leak was. Pierce cleared his throat. General, there's something else. We found Sergeant Thompson's cell phone. He made several calls to an unlisted number over the past week, always late at night. Trace that number, Hartley ordered. As Pierce left to handle the investigation, Maya realized she was facing the most complex operation of her career. She'd been manipulated by a former DIA agent into spying on her own military base. But someone else, possibly the real security leak, had orchestrated her exposure to prevent her from discovering the truth. General, she said, I think we're dealing with at least two different hostile actors. Morrison, who recruited me for intelligence gathering, and someone else inside Fort Harrison who wanted me stopped. Hartley nodded grimly. Which means the security leak is real, and we've just alerted them to our investigation. Maya felt her training kick in as she pushed aside her emotions and focused on the tactical situation. What are my orders, sir? Officially, you're still dead, Hartley said, and that might be our only advantage. Whoever's working against us thinks their plan succeeded. They believe you've been exposed and compromised. So what do we do? Hartley smiled for the first time since they'd begun talking. We let them think they've won, and then we spring our own trap. Maya felt a familiar surge of adrenaline as she realized her mission was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. 20-4 hours later, Maya sat in the Fort Harrison detention facility, playing the role of a disgraced soldier awaiting court-martial. To anyone watching, she appeared to be exactly what Sergeant Thompson had claimed, a fraud who had infiltrated the base under false pretenses. But appearances could be deceiving, especially when planned by someone with Maya's level of training. The cell next to hers contained Thompson himself, who spent most of his time cursing about the injustice of his situation. He still believed he'd uncovered a foreign spy, and Maya encouraged that belief whenever the guards were within earshot. I should have known you weren't really American, Thompson muttered through the bars. Your tactics were too good. Your weapons, knowledge too advanced. I don't know what you're talking about, Maya replied, maintaining her cover even here. What Thompson didn't know was that his cell phone records had revealed something far more interesting than his late-night calls to unknown numbers. The phone company's records showed that someone had been calling him, someone with access to highly classified information about Maya's real identity. Captain Pierce approached Maya's cell carrying what appeared to be official paperwork. To any observer, he was processing her for transfer to a higher security facility. Transport arrives in 1 hour, he announced loudly. Then, more quietly, Phase 2 is a go. Maya nodded slightly. Phase 2 involved her escape from custody, an escape that would be allowed to succeed so she could follow the trail to whoever had orchestrated her exposure. But first, they needed to spring their trap. An hour later, as Maya was being escorted to a transport vehicle in handcuffs, a carefully planned incident occurred. A supply truck backfired loudly, causing her guards to momentarily look away. In that instant, Maya slipped her restraints.